Okay, this is Algebra 1, Lesson 16. And somewhere on this lesson, there's going to be a code word or something that you're going to have to do to turn in. That way, I will know that you are watching the videos before coming in class. Okay? So this lesson talks about more complicated evaluations. Basically, it's just using brackets and parentheses and braces. Remember, symbols of inclusion. Parentheses, braces, brackets, and even absolute value are all symbols of inclusion. So let's look at the first example. It says negative a bracket negative a times p minus a bracket, where a is equal to negative 2 and x is equal to negative 6. So what you're going to do is you're going to go and input these values here for these variables. So we have, first of all, let's look at this. We have to write exactly the way it is. We have a negative, so we can't forget that negative. And what is a? It's a negative 2. And this is where the confusion comes in. Students tend to drop one of these negatives and say that's a negative 2 when you evaluate it. No, it's really a positive because you have a negative and negative. So don't forget the negatives. And then parentheses, what your value is. So we said parentheses is a different way of writing multiplication. We have everything inside the parentheses times everything outside. This is p minus a. Oh, so I'm sorry. I had this all wrong. It's when p is negative 2 and a is negative 4. So let's redo this. So we've got negative 4 bracket negative 4. What is p? Say negative 2 minus a negative 4. And I'm going to use braces right here just to keep it separate. And I've got brackets. So what I want to do is I want to look at this and look at my first parentheses. There's this. And this is an implied what? Negative 1. There's no number, it's an implied 1. So I've got this times this, right? You have parentheses, so that's what parentheses means. It's another right multiplication. Everything inside it times everything outside. Well, outside this parentheses is another parentheses. So it has to be multiplied to everything inside that parentheses. Then we've got our brackets, so that's our biggest one. So then when we work in, we've got this, well the end's right there, so that means an implied negative 1 times negative 4. Then I look here, well I've got this negative 2 minus a negative 4. Well, because this plus or minus is in between two symbols, it means I subtract it. But this is like an implied negative 1 times negative 4. So we're going to do these two first. Negative 1 times negative 4 is going to give me a positive 4. That still stays outside my brace. Then I can go ahead and combine these two. Negative 1 times negative 4 is going to give me a positive 4. Then I've got a negative 2. A negative times a negative is a plus 4. Alright, you see where we're at? So, I need to keep working inside the big bracket. There's nothing to simplify in this parentheses. But I can here. What's negative 2 and a positive 4? They're different signs, meaning you find the difference. The difference between negative 2 and positive 4 is 2, and 4 is bigger, so it's going to be positive 2. And this is where you get caught up or messed up, is you tend to want to put a plus there and add these together. If you have a parentheses, that's what you did inside. You got 2. It still means everything in here times everything outside, which is right here. So it's not plus, it's times. And then I've got 4 times 8, which is simply 32. You see that? 4 times 8. Alright, so let's move on. Let's do the next example. It's just keeping your negatives straight and keeping parentheses. Sometimes when you have to add parentheses because you have negatives as the values, you have to add another layer of parentheses on the outside, as change the outside parentheses to either a bracket or a brace. Let's look at this next one. AX negative A times A minus X, that's a bracket. A is equal to negative 2 and X is equal to negative 6. So we're going to come over here A. There's no negative sign, so it's just simply negative 2. And when you have two variables next to each other, or a letter next to a number without a symbol or without a any kind of symbol of inclusion or multiplication sign, it means multiplication. This simply means multiplication. So -2 times a -6. So I'm going to use parentheses because that's another way to write multiplication. Then I've got this negative here, and I can't forget. And what is a? It's -2. Then I've got this parentheses here, and what is a? So I'm going to put a baby little brace to know it's different, which is -2 minus, what is x? -6. -6, oops, and then parentheses, so they pair up together, and then my bracket. I can do this. -2 times -6 is a +12. -1 times -2 is a +2. And then I've got -2 minus and a minus becomes a +6. Then I have 12, and this just simply means times. What is -2 and +6? They're different signs. You find a difference, which is a +4. Yes, so then you've got 2 times 4 is 8, times 12 is simply 96. Okay, let's do the next one. And right now I'm going to stop and give you the code. Your code is, you have to do all the practice problems to lesson 16 on the top of your page. On the left-hand corner, I want a star with a circle around it. And I want this turned in, oops, left-hand corner, and I want it turned in at the end of class. We'll go over the practice problems, and then I want you to turn it in at the end of class. Okay? Let's do the next practice problem. It says -b, b minus c, minus c minus b, where b equals -4, c equals -6. And these are all examples in lesson 16. This is the 16.3. So again, we have a negative here. What is b? It's a -4. We have our negative. b is a -4. And then you've got -4. And actually, I'm going to change it this way. I'm going to make this parenthesis into a brace. And I'm going to say -4 minus -6, okay, minus, I'll make this into a brace too, what is c? -6 minus a -4, and then my bracket. Alright, we'll start here. Negative times a negative is going to give me a +4. Negative times a negative is going to give me a +4, right? Because you have two symbols of inclusion next to each other, that means multiplication. So now I'm going to work inside this big, giant monster. Well, then I have, well, actually it's right here. This times this, and you've got a minus. So I'm going to just put parentheses. I have -4, negative and negative is +6. Okay. Then I got my minus sign here, which I can't forget. Then I'm going to do what's inside this next symbol of inclusion, which are the braces. So I have -6 plus 4. So then I've got 4. Simplify what's in here. Because it's parentheses, that means I've got to bring it back down the same way. So it's multiplication still. If I put a plus or minus here, I've changed my problem. -4 and 6 is +2. I bring this down. That's why you got to work neatly and bring everything down. What's the middle inside? It's -2. So then I've got 4 times 8, negative, and a negative is a +2. 4 times 10 simply gives me 40. That's it. So put your code top left-hand corner of your paper with the practice problems, and I want them turned in class on Monday. Goodbye.